Like there's just a similarity between people who make comics. There's just something about all of us who make stuff. And when I was talked to Howard Chaykin or Neil Adams or Walt Simonson, there is an inherent similarity between all of us that I think is this constant negotiation between creativity and judgment.
Hey, thanks for listening. It's that time of year when the final big projects are underway for my design work. And there's always one or two that really soak up a lot of time, and one of them is kicking off. And I feel the pinch with my writing projects, knowing that this will be creeping in availability that I have. So I'm trying to keep real positive and open-minded about it. Last week, I came up with a technique to help combat something I was doing that I didn't recognize until I really took a look at the opening of my book and realized I was loading the reader with a lot of specific information that they didn't need to know at that point. And how I determined this was by highlighting proper nouns in blue. And then I highlighted the reuse of the proper noun in green so I could see where I was using them and to what volume I was using them. And then I would weigh the value of the information being a proper noun or a generic word. And I found that I was able to really back off on a ton of information that I didn't need to burden the reader with early on, because I want them to gain an understanding of the character and the world they're in, but without having to juggle a lot of balls in the process. I found that to be super helpful for me. Maybe it's because I'm a visual thinker in so many ways, but if you do struggle with this onboarding of your reader, take a crack at this. You might find that you can simplify through a technique like this, or find one that works best for you. Today's guest is a former guest, Jeff Johnson. He and I entered Marvel Comics around the same time. He was success out of the box. He may not feel it, but for many of his peers, we thought, wow, he just hit a home run stepping up to bat for the first time. So Jeff had this project, which I've had a couple of guests, had James Robinson on and Brendan Wagner, to talk about the Rogue's Kingdom campaign on Kickstarter. And Jeff done this brilliant work on the book. So he came back to talk about it. Now, we recorded this before the campaign launched, so he had no idea whether they would be successful or where they would land when this posts. So he doesn't know while we're talking. They've funded, but they have so many more stretch goals available for the people pledging. So I would really recommend, if you haven't even checked it out, to go over. There's a link in the description and check out what's available. Because if you like fantasy and you like comics, if you like James's writing, if you like Jeff's artwork, it's a no-brainer. I mean, there's a lot of plus sides to it. But they've got like variant covers, another one by Jeff, but Ryan Sook, Zach Howard, and Brendan Wagner have all done their own variant covers. At the end of the whole thing, we talk about it briefly, but he had a launch party on the Drink and Draw Social Club YouTube channel. So go check that out. I'll put a link in the description. It was pretty funny. Even if you don't watch the whole thing, just watch the beginning, because it's classic. Jeff's a great guy and always a pleasure to talk to. And we kind of get into a whole bunch of things about the project, about chasing down the things that you want to do. For someone who's been in the business for all these years and then finally says, I'm going to do the thing that I want to do, that's a big step. It's not easy to do the thing you want to do, but there's nothing more rewarding than doing it. So take a listen, enjoy it. I had a great time, and it's a pretty connected conversation. So this is me with Jeff Johnson. So I get pictures every so often of just like the valley just orange and glowing. I'm like, ooh.
It's super trippy. It's when we first moved here, we didn't have any fire for the first couple of years, and then every year since, And then a few years ago, I'm sure your sister told you what we lost Phoenix and talent.
Yeah.
So I think that I think they did some changes with how the homeless are down by the river, and then access to some of the more remote parts of the forest here. But like, that's okay for us, but we still get the fires from California, which are
they just keep coming up and up and up.
Yeah, they just keep coming. There's no getting around it. Is that better? Or is that too dark?
No, it doesn't matter. You know what? Since it's just us talking, there's no video, so you can you could do the light right behind you and make yourself look like a witness protection guy.
No, I don't want that. That's no fun. Okay, excellent. And so we're not doing video. We're just having the conversation.
Yeah, you know what? Once I grabbed the reins of this thing, and it stopped being sort of a live to YouTube broadcast, which makes it, you live with all your bruises. I was like, all right, well, I can like trim off stuff. And I'm like, oh, you know what? Like, it's like the sign off's always awkward, like all that kind of stuff. You know, when you do these things, you're like, all right, okay, goodbye. And I finally like, let me just do audio, because every time I made a change in the video, it took like an hour and a half just to make that change like saved and then upload like forever.
Right.
It takes 5 minutes to upload audio.
That's great. That's an interesting point. I mean, one of the things, like, I loved doing the show with the guys, and I loved doing my own, the smaller one, the another round one, but like, I kept with another round, those guys were more receptive to having a bunch of stuff in advance. Like, oh, let's prepare a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Dave and Dan did not want to do that.
What? I can't. I'm shocked that Dave didn't want to do any homework.
I know. Surprise, right? Like, I could not get because I tried to, I guess, in essence, kind of more produce it.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to have interview questions. I wanted us to have like a set amount of time for things, and I wanted us to have it be a tighter show. And those guys fought me every step of the way. Yeah,
I mean, I think Dan's magic is Dan's off the cuffness. Like he's very quick off the cuff kind of person.
Absolutely.
Dave's Daveness is like his thing. So like, I think, never step on the Daveness is my
It's true. And I didn't want to wrangle a tiger by the tail and mess it up in some way, but like every once in a while we'd have a guest who was an interesting person, but not necessarily comfortable chit-chatting or drawing live. Right. And we just have all this dead air. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, this is fine if we're going to edit, but like, we're live right now. This is boring as shit.
Totally. Yeah. Man, because listen, straight up, you guys are a huge inspiration for me to do this, because you were doing it at the time in 2019. Uh-huh. And, my wife went off to Ireland for like a month and a half for an art residency. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be bored. So I quickly got my art college buddies to come on so we could just hang out and pretend like we used to, when you play D&D and you got the sketchbook.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
But then I ruined it by like asking more and other people to come on, and it was funny because you guys were the official drink and draw social club.
Yeah.
So I think I originally like made the Google thing as like the unofficial, thing just to, poke at Dave. And then I eventually I was talking to guests and I'm like, listen, I don't draw comics anymore. I don't draw anymore. Like I really don't. And I don't drink. So I'm like sitting here with this moniker that has nothing to do with me. And then I ask Erica Schultz to come on. She's like, well, I don't drink and I don't draw. I'm like, yeah, me neither. So like, it was kind of like this lightning bolt of like, I probably should change the name.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the tradecraft stuff you have, the interviews you have, one of the reasons you do the thing that I really wanted to try and do with the show was kind of there's this wealth of knowledge and craft about how to make comics that isn't being shared, right? There isn't a centralized place for it. There is no codified approach to it. And there's not you don't have access to it, right? So like, when I was talking to Walt Simonson, like I'm like, this is the shit that I would want to know as a kid. Is because I've read all this stuff. I'm like, how did you get from here to there? reading
Right.
the same shit that I read. Like, what is the Walt Simonson match? Like, how does that work? Where's that craft?
Yeah. And I mean, and, having done 200 of these things now,
Right.
like, I am so shocked, especially, I mean, like obviously within like an age range of like, from probably 60 to, mid 40s or maybe a little earlier.
Your diversity is amazing, by the way. You have, I don't know how you get your guests, but your range is fantastic.
Oh, Jeff, it's blackmail.
Oh,
I have people working for me getting all the dirt. Yeah.
is that the trick? Damn it.
Yeah.
I should have thought of that.
Thought being smiling and pleasant. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
But the overlap of experience in so many ways, like, when you and I talk, I mean, look, we talked like 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I think it was almost 2 years ago when we last spoke.
Yeah, I think so.
And it was, and like, I think you were just starting to work on Rogue's Kingdom. I think you were just like, hey, I got this thing that I'm going to be doing,
Right.
I can't talk about it. And you had shared like some cool drawings, like with mountains and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, like that's the stuff. Cause
Right.
I'm a fantasy dork. Just having these experiences and like realizing like, we all face so many of these same sort of hurdles. And I always think like, man, if I was trying to get into this business, or if I was in the business at a very sort of like, but I had ambition, and I'm like,
Right.
I want more. When you get to hear someone who is where you want to be or has done what you hoped to do, it's really like, to me, I'm like, that's the encouragement I always wanted.
Right.
And then that's the encouragement that like is so much like, I mean, sure, somebody's saying, Jeff, man, this is so good. You've really worked hard and this is fantastic. Of course, that's great. But to bypass all the sort of like dumbness that we all do or did.
I mean, I'm like, I'll be honest, Docs, I'm kind of freaking out. Like, because I go live and like I'm having people help me with the page, and there's some snafus, but like as anything that like everyone has trouble getting stuff across the finish line. But like if it doesn't sell, what am I going to do? Like I did. It's everything I could possibly make it. It's the best I can make it. And if it doesn't sell, I mean, I'm not prepared.
Right. Like it's almost like it's a two thing. You have to do all this hard work, be above and beyond, but then there's this emotional component. Like
Right.
there's this like matter of your ego like I got in the comic business because I wanted to play with their toys. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't have this, I want to do my thing kind of stuff, which I totally think is so much healthier.
Right.
And like, I did not give myself permission forever to do the thing I want to do. Like I just kept that packed down as low as possible because I would get, I got in, in 91, and your work was some of the first work that I actually saw in the offices because your editor was my editor. So and I'm thinking, well, he's doing what I want to do, And so I like any idea of like carving my own little pathway wasn't there because all I wanted to do, my ambition was to emulate other people's achievements.
Right.
That's healthy.
Well, I mean, I'm still measuring myself against the most ridiculous of people: Mobius, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, Byrne, Alan Davis. Right. So,
yep.
Like on some level, I've been able to carve a bit of a path for myself, but I don't think I was able to do that, man, until I did animation.
Right.
Yeah. Like that's like I was able to get out of comics and then just draw for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The idea of ego and what it meant kind of disappears because that gets in the way.
Yeah.
They don't want you. They want what the show looks like, or they want the job to be done. They don't want your personality in it.
And that's why people who don't do that. Like, even if they're the greatest drafts person, like, and I think, my limited experience with animation, a producer is really good at going, you know what, that person may not be the best for this, but they might be really good at designing trucks.
Right.
And we need lots of trucks for this project. And, but in comics, like nobody's looking at it going, well, maybe they'd be better to be used for something else. Like, it's sort of like that comics breaks my heart, motif, of like, well, nice try, kid.
Yeah. Good luck.
Good luck. We have a deadline.
Yeah. Yeah. Not interested in you. Well, one of the things I think is interesting is I don't know how many times you experience this is like, oh, well, put in a Spider-Man sample or I worked on a Daredevil type thing.
Hmm.
But if you wanted to do another project that was like, say, Iron Fist or some other character that is basically in the same universe, you're
Yeah.
like, oh, but can you draw that character? I'm like, you just saw me work on Daredevil. You just saw me write Spider-Man. Like, why? Why?
It's so true because you don't have like, this isn't bashing, bashing zone, but what I recognized early on was that there were people with English degrees managing art. And that was always, to me, felt like a conflict that they
Right.
didn't have an understanding. So you would go around the offices and they would look at now listen, there's two sides of this story. One is they're right. The other, everyone is right. But you would go around, they would just use buzzwords. Oh, well, this feels this or that. And I'm like, oh, you know what? You guys just went into like a meeting and waited to listen to what Carl Potts said about some artwork and then like wrote down like, okay, this feels this. And then
Right.
you just basically, parrot what the guy who you say knows how to do something. And
Right.
yeah, he's still very well dressed, Carl.
Is
He's
he?
always
I haven't seen Carl in forever.
Yeah, I bumped into him at Heroes. I was totally shocked, and it was great. I had the best talk with Carl and
I love that guy.
Terry Kavanaugh. Like the three of us just had the nicest chat. And I said, "You're always the best dressed," and he's like, "What? Because I wore a suit jacket over a t-shirt?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I mean that's sartorial compared to most of us.
like, I wouldn't even know what a suit jacket was."
Oh yeah, that's really funny. I remember once Carl and I were talking about martial arts. I'm like, oh, so you train and you do stuff? He goes, yeah, train for a while. I'm like, what do you like? What do you do? What do you enjoy? He goes, well, I know just enough to get myself into trouble. I know just enough to do nothing when I get attacked.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. You're like, oh, what should I do? Dead.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. There's very little time for thinking in that.
Exactly.
I did a little bit of training years ago with a SEAL Team 6 guy, and it was hours of elbows and
Oh
knees.
yeah.
That's all it
Just
was.
uptight elbows, elbow.
Elbows and knees.
Oh, elbows
They're
and
like
knees.
your
Yeah.
hands are going to break if you try to hit someone, and it was just this. It was bruisey.
How'd you hook up with the SEAL Team Sick guy?
I'd like to do a lot of different things outdoors, and I was at the time shooting competitively.
Cool.
So I wanted to get better shooting my rifle for competitions. So I figured, well, go train with people who shoot, more than anyone else. So
Right.
it just happened to be teaching, like within 2 hours of where I live. So I was like, all right, I'll go to that. And
Right on.
yeah, it was interesting.
That's super cool. How long did you shoot?
It was
You
for a
still
whole
shoot
weekend.
competitively?
Not as much as I would like. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's the problem. Yeah.
It's an
It's
expensive
just,
hobby. Ammo is crazy expensive.
that's what really stopped the whole thing. I'm like, I don't really feel like I need to like be spending, this large sum of cash on things that go flying away at 3,000 feet per
Right.
second. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't seem like a very good way to spend my cash.
I know I think people one of the reasons I think it's so expensive to train soldiers is like back in basic training, it never even occurred to me like how much the rounds would cost
Right.
because we went through thousands and thousands of rounds.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, you got to get comfortable with it. Like it's expensive to get skilled at something.
This is great. This will dovetail perfectly. I think that's what when you practice, like if you do intentional focused practice,
Mhm.
you can really get the things you don't need to achieve sooner than later.
Right.
Versus just that sort of like, because like, I mean, you've done martial arts, training scars, like you did something and you learned to do it the wrong way, but you kind of muscle your way through it.
Yeah.
And then you have to kind of relearn it to not like make a mistake or, get hurt.
Right.
And I think that's like with everything. So I guess things costing a lot of money makes you go, okay, I need to really pay attention. When you're a little kid and your parents buy you a ski lesson and you don't pay attention, but then when you're an adult and you buy your own ski lesson, you're like,
You
well, that's
really pay
expensive.
attention.
I'm going to pay attention.
Right. Yeah, my wife has been doing jujitsu a lot lately, and we roll together on a Tuesday morning. Just sort of just a fun, like a little group of us rolls together. And I don't really do jujitsu. I do kimpo, and we have some grappling stuff. So, and I did Aikido for a really long time, so I have some understanding of the mat work and groundwork. But she was she was workshopping something. It's like, well, what do you do if someone does this to you? And she got on my back and she locked in, and I was on the ground, and I would, well, you would roll them over, but she was so tight that she wasn't able to get her arm out. And so she wound up like hyperextending a bunch of muscles in her back.
Oh,
Um, but that was that painful lesson, because she didn't know, because she's relatively new to it. All the other people have been training our whole lives. You automatically, the minute you feel like this can't move, you release, you just learn to open up.
right.
She hadn't developed that intuitive muscle trained self-defense she just hadn't developed that muscle yet, so she got hurt. She's like, oh, I need to learn that. I'm like, yeah, that's something we all took for granted. So we're like, we didn't even understand how she got hurt. Like, what happened?
Like what happened, right?
Yeah, so I don't understand, like, because we all would have bailed. We would have been like, oh nope, I'm stuck, this doesn't work, I'm out. But no, she just never got it.
Because it isn't life and death in that situation.
Yeah.
You can easily just, pull the cord and okay, let's reset and figure this out and, solve that problem.
Yeah.
Do you ever watch that movie, Red Belt?
Yes, I did see Red Belt.
I love that movie.
It's a good one. It's a really good one.
Yeah. And it's so like under the radar, like just not enough people have really kind of dialed into that one.
I think my friend who was studying jiu-jitsu in LA, his professor, I think it's Gerson, can't remember the name, was one of the guys in that movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's one of the training partners.
Well, because I mean, Mamet got all into jiu-jitsu, so that's why he wrote that film and directed it. So that it makes sense that the LA contingent would be well seen there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's. So you touched on it earlier. Your hardest, your greatest effort, your A game, your A+ game.
Sure.
It's for Rogue's Kingdom. This is the book. So we're recording this in advance, but like the campaign is coming to an end at this point.
Well, we're getting ready to go. So it's the. And you mentioned earlier, I know I've talked to you about this for a couple of years, but the truth is, James and I started talking about this book, I think it's almost like 5 years ago.
Okay.
So, yeah, well, because we started talking about it, and we then developed it. We knew that we wanted to do something together, and so we started to figure out what that was, and we settled on a fantasy thing, and then we settled on an era, and then we started carving out some characters and some plot ideas, and sort of organically, just going back and forth, we came up with Rogues. And I love it. Like, I love what James wrote. Like, he took the ideas that we talked about and created this incredible world, and these really living characters that I not only understood and can draw, but was really compassionate towards. I'm like, oh, I love this guy. I want to see him succeed. And then over the years, I put so much, coming from animation in the last 15 years, I spent all my lead time designing characters and backgrounds and the most ridiculous of things. Like, I'll send them to you. I have, so I was in my mind sort of creating the Bible for the animated series or the movie, right? There's expression sheets, and I went as far as designing the manacles that they use. I wanted to make sure I understood how they worked, and I set it in the 17th century sort of France, kind of a mix of Three Musketeers and Lord of the Rings. And I did that because just artistically, I wanted to see a fantasy that was not set in the Dark Ages. But logistically, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done, because everything is ornate and gilded and super complicated to draw. So I didn't plan ahead, but that's what I wanted to do. paid the price.
Lucky, magic spell that could change all the architecture, like in the third issue.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Yeah. Well, I also did the dumb thing of I'm a huge fan of Hal Foster, so I wanted all of the whenever they're not in a city, when they're in the woods or stuff, I'm still doing Hal Foster woods,
Yeah.
which take for which also take forever, but they're very satisfying. I mean, you know what it's like when you make something that's exactly what you wanted it to be. Yeah. No, but I made some bad choices.
Listen, bad maybe in the time management aspect of things.
Right. Well, that's always been a struggle for me is I tend to get lost in things.
Well, someone was mentioning that today about that whole sort of time vortex fashion of like the mind, and they were saying, it's a sort of an ADD kind of thing, and I can relate to that. I can relate to that sort of like you sit down to do something that you're really excited about, and the kind of like you blink,
right,
and like hours have passed, and
right,
like I have to use time. I have to use like alarms to stop me from working, because I know like, okay, let me just work for 50 minutes. Cause if I work for 50, I can then move on to something else. Cause if
smart.
I don't, I'll just keep going.
Yeah. I think that's definitely one of the things. So I think I've never been more productive. I think more consistently productive than when I was at CrossGen, because I had a desk. We all had hours. I could see the guy across my quad waiting for the page to, so I had an external manager, because when it comes to my internal manager, I get lost in the weeds. It's been the thing that I think I was drawn to drawing as a kid, is that escape into another dimension. But as a professional, you have to really try and control that. At least I have to try and control it, because otherwise I'll spend days deciding on how many buckles this armor gets, or
Sure.
developing an entire system of magical transport that I just put in the background everywhere. So yeah, it's one of those things that I am best with management, because I get lost.
Yeah, no, and I love how you use that example, like across gen. Like I know, working in firms or, corporations, you have the office, you have the desk, you're doing the thing like,
Right.
But man, like when you're left to your own devices, it's a real challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that realism thing, man, it's a fucking beast. Like it's so rough. Like I look at so many artists who have a very stylized look to their work, and I go, man, you got it all figured out, don't you? Because I'm thinking like and I'm not saying it's easier, but what I'm saying is they're not concerned about the buckles. Like
Right. Right.
I got hired to be the penciler for Deathstroke years ago, which was like the dream book for me, because if you want to talk detail in a costume, I'm like, that's my guy.
Yeah, all the scallops. Oh yeah.
Yeah, everything.
Right.
There's pouches, there's swords, knives,
Right.
everything,
Yeah.
And it was like my mind was like, this is it, and it was just like heaven for me. But like it probably would have ground me to a halt, doing that stuff. And I remember when bringing Dave back in, but when Dave redesigned the Deathstroke costume for like sort of teenage version Deathstroke or whatever he was, I'm like, this doesn't work. Like I was yelling, he and I were yelling at each other because I couldn't, like, you can't build this costume. It would this would fall off. And that way he's like, oh, yeah, but it looks good, man. And I'm like, but that's stuff that, like, it was like one of those kind of like
excellent Dave impersonation, by the way. It's solid.
And yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, but like, he has, even though he's very, very like structurally competent with everything he does, he also has the ability to kind of like freeform jazz stuff.
Yeah, his designs on Ben 10 are particularly great, because he was able to just make them crazy shapes, and then make them, so he took the crazy shapes, which I would never have thought of, and make them work. Like, oh, his silhouettes are bar none. Like, he's really good at that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's brilliant. I mean, there are those artists that you think of. I mean, you can go back to Toth being like sort of the grandfather of that sort of shape to character or shape to object kind of thing. And it's a beautiful thing. So, I mean, so as good as all your years working in animation were, they also, I guess, set a sort of a a poor example, as if you had a staff and a budget to
Yeah,
do.
it was
Comic.
well, yeah. I mean, the trouble is like I did all the jobs in animation. I bounced around, which was a lot of fun. But once again, I did have that over. I had like a structure to keep me from going crazy. Um, so when they'd be like, Jeff, we need some character designs. We need 2 or 3 of them today, or we need this one done by the end of the week. That's great because I knew what I was doing. But when it came to rogues, I would just go off on these mental journeys of like, what does this character look like, and how do I get him to move, and all my shapes, and then a week later, I'd have a bunch of really cool drawings of this interesting exploration. And like, I have one character who's in the first issue, and he's just a guy. He's just a throwaway guy. He fights the princess, and he loses, and he has big like mallets on his hands.
Okay.
And then I create. This is how not on point that I can be. So I liked that design. I designed him to be interesting in the thing, but I liked him so much. I thought as a character, he hated being beaten by basically a little girl because he's a big guy in this tournament. And so then he goes and tries to level up. And so I drew a bunch of designs for like he goes to improve his armor, and so he levels up and he trains. And so I designed that version of the guy. And then I thought it'd be interesting if he comes back and still loses to her. And so then he goes and then gets a wizard to help him and makes a deal with the devil. And so then becomes kind of this demon version of the guy and then goes back to fight her again. All that's super cool and will eventually be in the book.
Right.
But it's not a page. It's not even close to a page. Yeah. Yeah. So I did a million things that were not a page. Like I designed, so there's the caravan riders that have Peachy and Rondo, right, in the thing. So I designed all the caravan riders, and I designed their outfits, and so one of the caravan riders we only see far away, and then we see him again as his caravan gets knocked over. And but I have a whole character sheet for him. I have a backstory in there and everything.
I love that. It's you know what it is okay. What you're doing is you're writing with drawing.
Uh-huh.
You're and I'm once again I'll bring back the D&D thing. We sit down and we draw out our costume for our character, and we come up with all those little things when we were kids or adults. I'm not gonna age shame here.
Listen, I have a game on Wednesday.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh yeah, every Wednesday I play. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like that sort of like role playing thing that you're doing with the pencil, with the character, and you're coming up with all this story. And it's the same thing in this respect. You're just coming up with all the things, and it pays off, I'm sure, for you on the page, because when you're drawing, you don't have to answer the questions because, you're not redesigning Spider-Man's costume. It's already done. You know what to do. And so you've got all these kind of characters and you can use them. And I'm sure it probably adds a lot of acting life to everything that you're putting on the page.
I like to think so. I do believe that when I know I'm going to get hippy dippy and a little metaphysical, but I do think that when you're drawing something and you're putting your heart and your soul into it and you're really focused on it, that I do think that everything that you put into the page, like all the knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes, all the things that are happening outside the panel borders, I do believe that is conveyed through the drawing. Like I do think that the rest of the world exists outside the lines that people see, and that people can see it. They are affected by it. And if it becomes real for me, then it becomes real for them. Then I think the magic of the page and the story works. That's how it works best for me, is when when there are no doubts, and so that sometimes that leads to boring storytelling on my part, I think.
Okay.
But I do think that I want to design my stories always that you can fall in with the first panel and then be surprised at the last panel that the story's over. That's always the dream for me, is to make that transition seamless.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, and I would agree, like looking at the opening page in my head, like it's a once upon a time, opening page. Like that's kind of a big hallmark.
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's pretty consistent through your comic work too. I think you you always kind of did that sort of like entry kind of thing, but I feel you probably have a bit more control here than you did on a monthly.
Yeah, well, for sure. Well, I mean, also I have a much more chance to craft every single panel and page. Like I want to make sure that I'm showing that I always want to make sure that if I'm going to introduce a concept or an object or something weird in the story, that I show it in the background somewhere or someone using it. So we're going to have a lot of really great stuff. Like at one point we have centaurs and we have four-armed minotaurs and we're going to have dragons. We're going to have all this stuff. So I introduced the beaver major domo for the princess just in the background, or like that's a character. So it's all pretty human, pretty normal stuff until then there's this guy, right? And then okay, so that guy sort of pops the cherry on, like, oh, it's going to be this kind of fantasy book. Mm-hmm. And so as we do that, I never want anyone to be left behind. I want the story to be smooth.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot. I mean, that's just a lot. That's me planning, like, put this guy here, put that guy in the background there.
Right, totally. And it's, it is, I mean, it's a super challenge, whether it's on the page, with words or with drawings, to tell a story in a fashion that is memorable, in sort of like, timeless. That's the idea, is that when you struggle on the page, how do I sell this? That it's not going to feel forced. It's not going to feel rushed. Like, how do you move this story along for the reader?
Yeah. I mean, I think that comes from when I was a kid. Like, I loved guys like Alex Saviek and Keith Pollard and all these guys who were just such great, Sal Buscema, all these guys who were just great craftsmen who, like, you would pick up the comic, live in that comic for as long as it took you to read it, but always be able to open that door again. And I always was much more drawn to that. And even though I appreciated the Neil Adams breaking of panels and changing of stuff, and I always marveled at it. Mm-hmm. It never seemed to fit for what I wanted to do. Like, I was never able to quite make that seem natural.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. That's, oh man, like, I'm thinking about like how I engaged with books and like the people, like, cause like, yeah, sure. Bill Sienkiewicz is the coolest.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I never looked at that and said, well, I'm going to do that. Like, right. But it worked, and I would look at, when, Frank Miller would start really breaking up time with his panels and trying, like, loved every second of it, but never did I say, like, that's what I want to do.
Right.
Like it was just more, I think it was more clarity that I was always shooting for. Uh-huh. And, the dynamism had to fit within whatever the structure of clarity I was shooting for.
Right. Yeah. I don't know about how you learned to draw, but for me, it was definitely from comics. That was one of the major places that I did it. And I started off early with like John Buscema and Gil Kane and Hal Foster and those guys. And I think that on some level, the panel borders gave me some structure to work within. Whenever I start laying out a page or start doing anything, the first thing I do is draw my box, and then I start working within it. Like, I guess the multitude of possibility is too much for me, so I carve it down and then try and figure out what is it that I'm going to see in the box. The world behind the box is huge, and I think that's probably the problem. Is like, there's too much back there. I need to narrow my focus. So yeah, even sometimes I have a real hard time even just breaking panel borders sometimes.
Yeah.
Like it feels wrong. It feels scandalous to me almost.
Yeah. And it had, like, for me, it had to be done like for intent, like it had to be done for purpose, not just for, hey, I can do this because no one said I can't do it. Like it really had to kind of have a purpose to the whole thing. And, and there were challenges. They were kind of design challenges. How do you create this structure that it still works within the sort of the confines that I need it to work?
Right.
and the story demands, but like, can I solve that problem with it in a different solution that might just like, okay, well, if I have this arm extend out of the panel, now it does it says something else, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the interesting things about every line. I mean, you're right. We do write with pictures. And I think that every time, every line says something. It's a word or something. I remember Shannon Wheeler, Too Much Coffee Man. You know Shannon?
Oh, yeah, the Shannon Wheeler.
Yeah, he's amazing and he's great. So he was in our studio for a while when he lived in Berkeley. And I remember watching him work on a Too Much Coffee Man page, and he was using this tree, the roots of this tree as a descending graphic, and there was story happening in between it. And I was amazed at like how he was conveying the transition of time and just the story and the joke all together. And I thought, like, I even told him, like, dude, you are using comics in a way I have no idea how to use. Like, you're using the graphic possibilities in your layouts or something that's way beyond anything I can imagine. And it's impressive. And I think it's one of the things that I love about comics is just how many different ways there are to approach a page.
Yeah, I mean, I've been sort of obsessed with Jesse Lonergan's work for like the last year or two, and if you get a chance to check his stuff out, it's the guy is so clever, just so clever in his page design and structure and how he tells stories. So I'll send you a link.
Excellent. Yeah. No, I'm always fascinated by that because every once in a while I feel trapped in the boxes.
Yeah.
And I feel like I should maybe break them and try other things, which I do occasionally. But even my time doing storyboards and animation, I got so comfortable in the box. Like it just makes sense for me. That it always feels as though this shirt doesn't fit right, or this jacket is not quite the thing I want whenever I'm trying to do something more.
Well, those things are missing
more dramatic.
sleeves. I don't want a shirt that's missing the sleeve. The sleeve, it's
right, exactly. Like this doesn't fit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. It's like that crazy shirt that woman made Jerry wear. That big poofy, the puffy shirt on Seinfeld.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Nobody wants to wear that.
Yeah.
I mean, it is cool to be the pirate.
Yeah. That would be fun.
Yeah. I asked your partner in crime on this project, James. Mm-hmm. The question I sort of kind of opened up with him was, how do you keep jazzed? Like, how do you keep recharged? How do you keep yourself engaged? Because it's been over 30 years now, dude. Like, it's not
with drawing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. And, so I just turned 55 a little while ago. And I have to say that there have been times where I don't understand why I am still doing it. Like I've had a great career. I've made some fun art. I've made a lot of really good friends, but like there was at some point where I'm like, what am I doing? Right. Like this is, am I just drawing another version of Spider-Man, or am I just going to do storyboards? And I like drawing for a living. But I always wanted something a little bit like I wasn't having that itch scratched in the same way that when I was a kid drawing all these characters that I had passion for. And I think that's just part of being like, part of hitting that. My midlife crisis, I did not buy a new car. I did not have an affair. I didn't take up skydiving or any of those things, but I did have to take a serious long look at like, what does it mean to draw stuff, to sit at the desk all day, to in essence choose loneliness, right? Like it's a weird life choice. And then one of the things that was always great about it though is Rogues and working with James and doing something that I've never done before, like having that world that you get to build on your own. I do think that was always kind of the thing I kept coming back to. So the inspiration now is to make more things that I've always had in the back of my head, like to really figure out some way to get that stuff out. And that's figuring out how to do that is tricky because that stuff doesn't necessarily pay. So, And I think that hopefully the Kickstarter is an avenue for that, and that for I know that a lot. I mean, it's really kind of impressive. It's almost a renaissance happening with a lot of the Kickstarter stuff. It's like it's work that you would never see. That's amazing being put
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
No, it's, I mean, as sort of crippling as the pandemic was in so many levels, the straight to consumer comic book model that
Mhm.
had exploded in the time since, it's been fantastic. I mean, the fact that you can see all these different projects from every level of the creation, spectrum,
Right.
it's unbelievable. And it's funny after talking with James, like how, he feels almost like he almost like is treating himself like as a new guy,
Yeah.
in this process when,
Right.
he's created all these books that, are like put on the
There-
best shelf.
there- yeah. There's legendary. There's some legendary stuff from James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And things like, and it's just like everybody who loves comics, knows James' work and they love him, but he's sort of like, well, like trying this, and I'm like, wow, okay, but that to me is a great sign because, going back to martial arts, I mean, the idea is like you can't be comfortable training. Like training is when you need to be the most uncomfortable.
Right.
And it's like everything, but like when you, like, I would always know that I was doing really well drawing if it felt like I was going right before the edge of the roller coaster dipped down, that sort of butterfly kind of terrified feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I'm drawing, I'm like, oh, this is when it's all coming together, because I'm just at the edge of the wheels falling off. Like it's just, I'm not in control almost. That's what it felt like. Yeah.
There was my Aikido instructor used to say that that you really only feel alive when you're operating at the edge of your skill because you're about to fall off.
Yeah.
And that if you're not on the edge, you're taking up too much room. is another thing he would say.
Oh, I like that one. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like, when you were a kid, I mean, you build ramps and jump your bike on a ramp, and like you did all these ridiculous things which were outside, the convention of what you should be doing at the time, but you certainly had a great time laughing even when you fell.
Exactly. Well, I mean, one of the things I marvel at is that how ignorantly arrogant I was when I was in my early 20s, first breaking into Marvel, because I wasn't good and I had no idea what I was doing, but I just I'm like, oh, I'm just going to plow ahead. I'm just going to keep barreling ahead.
Yeah.
And that kind of unsuspecting confidence, I think, was really helpful in getting me to do stuff like, yeah, sure, I'll do this, or yeah, I'll try that. Like, yeah,
right. It's, I mean, because like I think it's, and I relate to that because I mean I remember just, I look back, I'm like, how did I do that? Like, how did I how did I swindle all these people into like letting me come into their office? Like just trying to, and you just did the song and dance to get them to say, yeah, sure, come on in, kid.
Yeah.
And and you walk in, bringing the worst artwork they're going to see for the day, I'm sure.
Right.
But they, but you did the thing, so and there was this blind, like you said, this blind confidence, and I think you need it. Because I think if you had too much self-analysis, you might go, yeah, I'm going to go do something else.
Well, I think that's one of the things I ran up against was the too much knowledge of what I was good at and what I wasn't good at, and letting the things that I wasn't good at be more of a hindrance than the things that I was good at being a motivator. And so I think that battle happens I assume it happens for everyone at a certain age.
Yeah.
But I do know that I know lots of artists. And when I was a kid, I heard that Arthur Adams said he didn't like drawing once.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it was substantiated or true, but like I had heard that he didn't like drawing anymore. This had to be way back in the early 90s or something. And because I guess he wasn't producing as much. And I just asked, like, well, what's up with Arthur Adams? And then I don't know, someone said, "Oh, he doesn't like drawing anymore." And I thought, like, how can you not like drawing anymore? That doesn't make any sense to me. Of
Yeah,
course, I've hit that many times. Where I'm like, well, drawing sucks. Drawing is horrible.
totally. Well, man, like the amount of hours you have to plug in
Mm-hmm.
to do, a page. It's unbelievable, and I'm tangenting here a bit, but like someone had posted something. Well, they'd done the ubiquitous. Let me see if I can get Neil Gaiman to reply to something I write on the internet, because Neil is a very generous person, and someone said like, oh, I've got this idea for a comic book in my head. I can see all the things in my head, but I can't draw. So I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, Neil Gaiman. And he replied immediately, or whatever he replied, saying, well, I guess you need to make friends with an artist. That was his response, which I thought was great. I replied to her saying, go easy on yourself. Don't judge yourself on what you're doing against other things. If you think other people's artwork is better than you, doesn't always have to be the case. If you can see this thing in your head, do what you can. Nobody knows how to draw, write, or play music without practice. Like you have to put the time in to do it. So I think that like maybe that's part of that blindness that you were talking about of going, well, because you look at it and you go, oh, that's not as good as I want it to be. Right. And then you grind back into it, and it's horrible. Like that, like I'm sure you probably hate how you draw hands right now, or one of the extremities. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like how one of the extremities is the thing you hate the most about what you do.
I mean, to that very point, I was just so one of the things that's been really great, and I want to thank everyone out there who's gotten a commission from me in the last couple of years, is that animation is fun, and I like doing animation, but it takes a ton of time. And one of the things that's been most fun in the last couple of years is I've done a ton of commissions. I've got a lot of commission work, and that's been a blast because I get to draw all the fun stuff, right? Just a cool shot of Wonder Man or a cool shot of Spider-Man. But I was just working on a cool shot of Beast and Wonder Man, and I was having real problems with Beast's toes. I was having just this morning, I was having a real problem with his toes.
I can remember that cyclical annoyance. Like it would just be, like, oh, okay. And you focus and you get better and you're like, I'm happy with my hands now. But then you go, oh, those feet are terrible, and then you go chasing after the feet, and then you hit the noses, and then you go after the eyes. And next thing you know, and don't put a fedora into the whole thing. Any hat ruin everything, I
mean, I just sent you a preview of issue 3, a splash page, a 2-page splash page where Rondo walks into the bar that's owned by his friend, and there's a lot of animals, and it's a cat bar. It's called the Starry Cat, and Rondo has one of those. So what?
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and there are hats.
Okay, so Rondo's hat, that long French Three Musketeers hat, that thing is a nightmare every time. I mean, I've drawn through it, I've figured it out, I've tried to sit it on top of things. I just can never make it. It always looks wrong. It just always looks like that doesn't fit on someone's head.
And the problem is people don't wear these things anymore, so we don't even have any sort of natural experience of what it looks like.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. But also, I think that there's a way to draw hats that Jose Luis Garcia Lopez does really well, and then Gene Colan also did really, really well, where the hat can almost act kind of like an expression enhancer.
Yes.
With eyebrow stuff, and I've always wanted to be able to pull that off, but I've never quite figured it out. And maybe it's just I don't wear hats, so maybe I should start trying to wear hats more and see if that's part of it.
Yeah, maybe you should break into the cool hat game. Find yourself.
Yeah, there's definitely that'll bring the versatility, the truth to my drawing.
Totally. I'm going to send James a note to add more hats into the script.
More hats. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I need. Well, poor James, like he's so compassionate and he's so great to work with. And I think he watches me struggle with trying to make it perfect. He's like, it's good. Jeff, just get it done.
You're like, I don't want good. I want great.
Yeah. And so having the Kickstarter has been super helpful in being like, oh, now I have a deadline. Now I have I can see the steps coming to fruition. I can see all the colors and the letters coming back. So I'm like, okay, there's now that outside force that I think I need to rein me in is there. And it's been super helpful.
It's the desk across the room with the
It
inkers.
is. Yeah.
Like having some sort of external structure. It was always like my biggest detriment. I had a great apartment in Manhattan. I had a beautiful view uptown, wonderful studio, big drawing table with skylight. But man, I had nothing standing over me saying,
yeah,
you got to do the thing, and
it's do the thing. You gotta let it go. And when you're a kid and you're preparing samples, or you're doing your first pages, like you have this thing you're pursuing, right? So it's that you're motivated and you're driven. Like whenever I got a note from Fabian about like, oh, work on this or work on that, I immediately went home and did the work.
Mm-hmm.
And without a thought of, is this good enough or any of that's just like, oh, this is the job. I did the job. Now here's the thing. And when I was in animation, I really had that. I mean, that I love that. I mean, you go in the office and you have, here's the deadline. This is it. There's no blowing this, and everyone's standing around, so everyone's panicked.
For sure.
I think I thrive on that anxiety in some way.
Sure, yeah, or at least a group mass hysteria,
Exactly. We can. Oh, we're all going over to the edge. Great, I'm on board.
I don't have to be so worried now. It's all of us.
It's all of us. Fantastic.
Yeah. No, I fantasized, when I would go into the offices to drop pages off or beg for work. And you would just look at the empty drawing tables in the bullpen. And I go, man, like if I could just show up here in the morning,
right,
and just draw my pages and go home, I would be so thrilled.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I loved about having a studio with my old studio mates, Scott Collins and Steve Jones and a couple other guys that I used to live with in Berkeley. We'd all have a studio space. We all went to. That was the best, because not only did you have someone looking over your shoulder, but he was a friend and also doing the same thing you were doing. So even if you hit a mental snag, you could just be like, Scott, what does this foot look like? For God's sakes, help me.
Yeah. At least you have that sort of sounding board.
Yeah.
And like, as you said, like, midlife crisis, kind of like looking at life and saying I'm choosing loneliness, a day.
Right. Yeah.
It's super tough.
It can be, because it's such drawing it can be a real, like one of the things I love about Drink and Draw is that we would do it together.
Mm-hmm.
We would all hang out, right? Whether you were drinking or not, or even drawing something that was great or just doodling, it was that group endeavor and that everyone sort of enjoying that moment, I thought was great. And it was really fun because when you relax, different stuff pops up, different drawings come out. So yeah, I miss the LA. I mean, I love where I live in Medford, but I do miss being close to all the other artists in LA. That was a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife, grapples with like, we should just move out into the country. Like she does this all the time. And I'm thinking, man, but like, you're going to go crazy if you don't have people around. Like she is the kind of person who needs to be around other people. Mm-hmm. I do have much more of the ability to stay by myself for a longer period of time,
right,
which probably helped me being a comic book artist, or helps me being a writer, that I'm like, I don't need anyone. Like I could just type away or whatever the thing is.
I think that's an important ability to. So my wife is a novelist, and her office is next to my office, and we see each other all day. But like at some point, we'll realize that we haven't actually spoken to each other for days because we're off in not just different rooms but different planets sometimes.
Right.
And I think it's one of the things that I think is hardest about being an artist. It's also one of the greatest things because you can go to your world whenever you feel like it. But it sometimes can be quite isolating.
Oh yeah, for sure. She has a studio, so she goes there, mm-hmm. and I think it's easier for her. Like coming back, I'm kind of always in my head. Like even mm-hmm. when I come back, I go somewhere and write in the morning. But when I come back, I'm still kind of out there. I don't know if that's. I mean, that just may be my makeup in that respect. I was thinking about, yeah. So like, I mean, but that's kind of cool. Like the two of you being in your own spaces through the day working. That's kind of
Yeah.
that's kind of an interesting thing. What, so, you know, you respond to things at a very early hour here on the East Coast. So what time do you get up?
Well, ever since the Army, I've always gotten up early. So I've always been, even in my early 20s and stuff, I'm still like a six in the morning, 6 in the morning guy. But as I've gotten older, I've drifted even further down the rabbit hole into like, I'm up by 4 usually.
Okay. That's,
Yeah.
that
So,
makes sense because I'm up at 6. And
yeah.
then that's usually when you'll respond to something like around like 6:07, it's like Jeff Johnson likes this. I'm like, wait, is he staying up all night? Like,
Yeah. No, I definitely come from from the military school. I was always been kind of an early riser, but but after the military, like you just get used to getting up at 5. I remember when I was at my AIT in Denver way back in 1986. Like we got up at 3:30 every morning, and you cleaned the barracks and you did all your stuff, and then you went to school for the day, and you were done by 3. Um, but it was definitely it took some getting used to, and so you'd be in bed by 7:30 or 8.
because you're
So,
wiped.
yeah, you're wiped out. So like when like there used to be an old Army like promos like we do more before 5 in the morning than most people do all day. It's because we get up at fucking 3 in the morning. Like it's just and there's no one around, and people are yelling at you. So of course you're more productive. So
Yeah, but let's be fair. You're not getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's a sergeant waking.
exactly. Someone is definitely banging a drum on your head.
Yeah. There is no sleeping in.
Yeah.
Luxury of 6. Yeah. But 4 o'clock that's impressive, man. And listen, I think you're like 6 months younger than me, so now I'm feeling really like I'm slacking. What time?
Oh yeah, but listen, I will take a nap, and I will also be out by 9 o'clock. Like if there's if there's something, like if we had to, I was just whenever Scott Collins and I were at a show in Memphis, and so you have like you get up and you do the show, and then you want to hang out and do dinner and stuff and everything, and like we both worked on sketches, and we were both in bed, like a couple old men, both in bed by 9:30, and that was like we're missing the show, we're missing all the other stuff. Like I can't do it.
Yeah, no, man, I'm so tired going to shows. I don't do a lot of shows, but I do Heroes every year, and like go out to the things. And I'm like, I just want to go to sleep. I just said like, and it's like 9 o'clock, and they're just like, "Hey, we're gonna go." I'm like, "Cool, have fun." Exactly. I'm gonna go to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've got to learn how to do. Time management's always been a struggle, and part of my thing for my birthdays, I promised myself, I'm like, I'm going to get better at getting up, making a list, making a schedule, doing all. It's an odd thing to give yourself as a birthday present, but like, I'm going to learn this skill so that for the next however many years I've got left where I can still draw, I can actually do the things that I want to do. Because maintenance becomes much more of an issue. Like I've got to get some exercise. I've got to stretch. You've got to eat the right stuff.
Yep.
Too many of our compatriots are jacked. Like shoulders are messed up, backs are messed up. And I do not want to play that game. Because it's horrible.
No, it's bad. And like and not even just like the physical, like sort of the the musculoskeletal stuff. Like there's a lot of like health issues that people are not addressing now that we're in our mid 50s.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the greatest gift you can give yourself. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. Like I have been, because for me, it's the same battle, and we're not alone in this, in this battle of like how time management, getting things organized. Like I started doing bullet journaling.
What's bullet journaling?
Okay. So it's like, it's not journaling in like, dear diary, I'm, like, it's not that. It's for your day. Like you sit down and you have like the journal starts off, you write all the months of the year down, and then you write all the days of January down. And if you know things that are going to happen on those days in January, you write them down there. And then you do a single day every day. You just write the date, and then you bullet out what you're going to do that day.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have tasks. You can go, okay, I need to do this, 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 and this. Like you're on my journal list today. Okay, talk with Jeff.
Right.
And I have to, record an intro after this and then plop it onto, edited show and then post it so it goes out tomorrow morning. So like if I don't put those things on the list, I'll be like up till 11 o'clock at night trying to like get all that stuff done because I did other things, because I didn't sort of task orient myself. And the only way that I can do that is I wake up in the morning and I meditate. So if I don't meditate, my head is all over the place. And so I meditate and then I bullet journal and then I can kind of get into the day. I make my oatmeal and then I have my food. Like it's old people talk.
I know, but it's funny though, because it's productive old people talk. And if I'd had these lessons when I was in my 20s, perhaps my career would not have had so many hiccups and bumps and stuff, right? Because that wasn't something I learned to do really until I went to CrossGen and then animation afterwards. And then even that I have to remember those skills and self-impose those parameters now that I'm not in an office setting. And it can be tricky because you want to balance it with, I want to give myself the freedom to journey into this other world and lose time. But like, you still have to get the basics done, right? Like no matter how great a drawing might be that's super in depth that I've created, if I don't get it out and no one gets to read it, what was the point?
Right. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and we know, like the if it's a scheduled book, well, there's no other thing more important than hitting that schedule. It doesn't matter how good the drawing is. They don't care. Right. They really don't. They're just like, we need the book done. It's one of those things. So like, I think for you to say that, like, and do that, like be like aware of it, it's huge because, we're not our parents. We're going to be working for a lot longer than our parents did.
That's the hope.
And it's like, I love that point of view. Like that's the hope versus like, you're right. I mean, because like, we're creative people. So we chose a career where we actually like want to do the things that we do. And so we kind of want to be, relevant and engaged and, productive for as long as possible. Totally.
Well, I know that it bugs my wife, but I tell her like my plan is to die at my desk. So, I mean, so have fun because you're going to find me someday at my desk.
Maybe you can help her out and get like some sort of giant, bag, that you can put your chair right on top of. So when she does come in, she can just kind of pull the bag up and seal it up. And then
that's sensitive. Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a fair compromise.
Neat and clean,
So yeah, I have my chair, but I'm also sort of half in a body bag just in case. Yeah, no, I think that's cool.
Yeah, I think you just pull it on over and zip it up and then call the coroner,
I think that's the best she's going to get. Yeah. That's the best offer she's going to get.
You're welcome. It's a challenge, man. Like my midlife crisis was writing a novel. Like, hey, I'm going to embark on this course. Like, how much less security could I aim for? Maybe a shot at the NBA or to become a movie star at this age.
Man, writing a novel is no joke. My wife, I think she's on 175.
It's insane what your wife, the amount your wife has written.
She's an inspiration when it comes to time management, productivity, getting into the zone, staying into the zone, and grinding. She's amazing. And so that's always frustrating to watch her do it well and then me not do it well. So that's part of I'm going to definitely employ the bullet list. I think that's a good system.
I'll send you the link to it. I mean, it's a book you can buy it on Amazon or pick it up anywhere. And just, it to be honest, it's been so helpful for me to have something that I can refer to, because I think that's the thing. Like, I have an app on my phone called Things and I've used it for years. But I find that when I'm going through my day, I don't pull out my phone and look at the thing to say, what do I do next? So you need to have the device, you need to have the thing where you're going to look for it.
Right.
So like being a kid of sketchbook, sort of growing up using sketchbooks, like, well, a book, and as a designer, like, your book is what you have. You always have your notebook with you to sketch something in there or write something down. So I always just like, that's the thing that I'm going to refer to. So
I've got this one right here.
What's that?
This is, so it's a great sketchbook I got. It's got the Da Vinci, embossed thing on the thing. But this is my science fiction book. So I have, just whenever I think of a science fiction-y robot, something idea, I'll put it in here.
That's great.
And this is a fun one. But like, it's right here. So the minute I have stuff, and I have over here, I just have a tray of, whenever I have an idea, I put it down, I put it in the tray. So if I don't have time to really flesh the idea out, I'll just put it in. And that way I can, whenever I have time, I come back to it. But yeah, having a sketchbook on hand is something I've done since I was a kid.
And that's like, and like, it goes back to that writing with word, or, writing with pictures. Mm-hmm. Like that's what you're doing. You're like, idea, just sketch the idea out.
Right.
And store it. It's a thing. Okay. So you get up really early in the morning. Like, what's your work day like? Like, how do you block it out?
I try. So I get up and I do a lot of like whatever emails I have to do, whatever businessy type stuff I have to do, take care of the animals, and basic household chore type stuff. And then I'm usually sitting down at my desk by 7.
Okay.
And then trying to do some drawing. And so I have a list up here on my wall of the things that I have to get done. And then as I finish them off, I write them off the list. And then throughout the day, I'll walk a dog, I'll go to karate, or I'll just try and work. I just try and work throughout the day. I mean, the problem is I need to get a friend of mine, Tim, who is an amazing storyboard artist, has an egg timer by his desk. Mm-hmm. And so when you're doing storyboards, you have so many little drawings that you have to do that he'll give himself a minute. So he'll just flip the egg timer when it goes.
Wow.
And I think I need something like that, because then I'll look up and it'll be like 4 p.m. So I think my real issue is that time just slips away.
Okay. So that's the other thing I do. There's a thing called the Pomodoro method. So the Pomodoro method is, so you work for a period of time and then you take a break, a short break, like 5 minutes, if that's what it is. And like, so I was doing like 25 minutes of writing, 5 minutes off. And I would just do that like 8 times, for my writing session every morning. But I found that to be a little bit frenetic. So I do 50 minutes with 10-minute break. And in that 10-minute break, I'll run to the bathroom, I'll reply to an email, whatever the thing is, check social media, because,
Sure. Right.
And then that 10 minutes is up, and then you're back in. And I found that having that rhythm of like on, off, like from my mind, helps me stay focused. So the second that thing goes ding, my mind is like back to the writing,
Really?
And my head is down. Okay. And I'm flying through the thing. And the interesting thing is that you're sort of in the middle of something. So if you're in the middle of a drawing and the thing goes bing, you're like, oh, I want to finish this, but like you don't. But that tension sort of like is still there. So when you go do your stuff, you come back and it bings again, that it's not gone. Like
you can jump right back in. You don't have to get back on the train.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So
this interview is actually super helpful for me trying to get stuff done. I mean, I know we've talked about rogues a little bit, but man, this is way better.
Well, it's like, I mean, like I know, like I said earlier, like all the overlaps are there, like for so many people. And this isn't me saying I've got the answers and I do everything right and haha, fuck you guys. Like, right. It's me saying I struggle with this every day. I don't win every day. And it's, and I don't beat myself up over it anymore. Like I used to.
Smart.
Carry that forever, like it's tough. Maybe that's why half the reason I do this stupid podcast is because I'm like carrying all my disappointment for not being, you or Dave or, any one of my peers from the time, so.
Well, I mean, I do think it's great it's so funny how similar we all are, even though we come from all kinds of different backgrounds and all over the country. There's just something inherently, uh, you know, like there's just a similarity between comic book, like people who make comics and
Hmm.
love comics. Like there's just something about all of us who make stuff. And when I was talked to Howard Chaykin or Neil Adams or Walt Simonson, there is an inherent similarity between all of us
Yeah.
that I think is this constant negotiation between creativity and judgment. And it's a really, I think it's at our core.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think by and large, creativity beats up judgment a lot
It did.
in our decision making matrix. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. I did so I tabled at a convention for the first time in 24 years.
Yeah, what was that like?
Um, Sadly, the attendance was really low. So
Was that Heroes? Was that a different show?
this was Beer City Comic Con
Okay.
here in Nashville. And so there weren't a lot of people on the floor. So I didn't get overwhelmed with, all the people coming to look at 25-year-old artwork.
There's there is a ton, there is a huge.
I downplayed it. I downplayed it with so many people at Heroes who were saying you should have a table, and I go,
Right.
well, I'm like, who wants to look at 25-year-old artwork? And someone just did this, like, waved their arm around. They go, well, pretty much all the people who come to the comic convention, idiot. I'm like, oh yeah. So, but it was great. But I also got to be on panels, which I had never done panels before. So I was on one, and I was a moderator for another. And I was just given a topic. I didn't even get to come. I wasn't asking to come up with my own, but they're like, "Hey, here's your topic, and you're going to have Frank Cho, a Navy SEAL, and a philosopher of the Stoics." On,
I would like to see that panel. Did you guys record that? That sounds fascinating.
I think it's recorded somewhere, and it was Peter Parker on resiliency and responsibility. That was
fascinating.
And it was great. It was absolutely great. I mean,
how did Frank Cho get into that mix because of his? How did Frank Cho get on that panel?
I think they just wanted to have like comic book person up there,
Okay.
like like I don't know if I completely legitimately classify as that, to the lay person. So, and Frank had no idea what he was doing there. He like kind of walked in like, oh, what am I doing here? Like, I'm just like,
I don't know if I would describe Frank as a stoic.
No,
I would describe him more as an Epicurean. That's an erudite joke that I hope Frank is not insulted by.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. But it was. But so what I found, because I used to go to conventions, like go to New York Comic Con because I lived in Manhattan after I was in the business, and I got really bored. Like, I'm so used to sitting at a table and talking to people and having a lovely time, reviewing portfolios or whatever the thing is with somebody.
Right.
And I found myself to have no purpose at a convention. And that was kind of heartbreaking. And then I started the podcast, and then we'll go to conventions and I can talk to artists and say, hey, Jeff, you think you'd like to come on the show? And you're like, go away. I'm making money. And like, that's like,
we're talking about a different Jeff, apparently.
Yeah. And that was the kind of thing. I'm like, okay, I like doing that, but sitting at a table is odd because I'm not like selling something, and hardly selling me. So like I'm like, hey, look at artwork or listen to a podcast, and they're kind of so disparate in some way that people don't know what to do when they walk up to me. Yeah. So maybe I should juggle or something.
I can teach you how. It's not that hard.
I know how. I taught myself.
Can you do clubs?
What?
Yeah,
I can. Yeah, no blades, but I'll do clubs.
I know.
Yeah.
I was working up to machetes, but I never quite got there.
That's pretty gutsy. I like my hands too much.
Dull machetes, obviously. Yeah.
Not flaming sharp machetes.
Not sharp ones, no.
No. So I have to do some thinking as to where I think I might fit into a convention. Like, I like panels because I do like talking, much like you, and I like talking to people. I love doing critiques. I would sit at a table and do art critiques all day if I could.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking about. I mean, there's very few things I love talking about more than comics and art and how they fit together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you still have any artwork from your olden days?
Yeah, I ended up found I had 5 folio books of artwork.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was digging through all my stuff and I'm like, oh my God, I had to order like another folio book to put them in there.
That's great. Do you have the stuff? Is your stuff? I mean, I don't have many of them left, but I love when it was hand lettered on the page.
Hand lettered stuff, man.
That's the best. That stuff is it's historic. I don't think no one does it that way anymore.
No.
That's my favorite. I mean, that's my favorite page with the hand lettering. I love that stuff.
And then you have the shameful ones of yours, which have the paste ups on there. And like that was because you were late.
Yes. Yes. For a long time, the paste ups would fall off and I would collect them at the bottom of the box. Because I don't know if you kept yours in the old FedEx boxes, but I did mine the other. And so you just put those, you just like, where did this go? Where did this balloon go?
I think it's like a David Bowie song. Like you're just sticking different, balloons onto stuff and be like,
Exactly.
cool, man, whatever fits. Yeah. Yeah. The yellow, I call them the yellow stains of shame on the pages.
Yeah, that's it. Where the glue is just faded and
Yeah.
You know.
So, I mean, I'm not hyperbolic when I say this. Like, this is some of the absolute best artwork I've ever seen you do. And it's not to like knock anything you've done because, you do amazing work, but this is like, you're truly inspired on this stuff.
Thanks, man. Yeah. I have to say that there's something about, I always feel like my best work because I feel like I have some technical skills, but I think the thing that I'm best at is making an emotional connection with the characters. Like I always really liked, one of the reasons I liked Green Lantern is because I knew I get Kyle. So
Right.
Drawing Kyle for me was, it was easy to picture and it was easy to feel. Like I knew what he was doing. I knew why he was doing it. And then the same was true with Wonder Man. Like I knew I get him, right?
Yeah.
I understand what he's doing, and it's also true of Peter Parker. But like, I had a terrible time. I did not think I did a very good Batman or Superman. I knew how to draw them, and I think that I was functional, but I didn't think I brought anything to that particular table. And when it comes to rogues, is like I know these guys inside and out. Like there's I feel when I'm drawing them, I feel them. I can. It's almost as though I can tell while I'm drawing if it's right or wrong just by the way the drawing feels. And so the characters will talk to me in a way that I think other times that's never really happened before. And so I'm so invested in this world that every little thing matters, and I'm spending a lot of time with it. And I think 15 years of doing animation, I just got to practice other skills. Like just one of the things that's great about anime, and I recommend it to anyone who wants to become better as an artist, whether it's in animation or just something you do on your own, it's that intensive focused practicing we talked about earlier. Is like for years, I just did characters. I just worked on shape and creating in line combinations and just trying to make, and turning characters and just doing that one aspect of comic book creation. And then I was just a background artist for a while, and I just did storyboards and really getting able to, and I think that changed the way that I approach comics. And so I think my understanding of the picture is a lot deeper than it used to be before I'd done animation. And I think that's coming out, and I definitely feel it in the drawings.
Yeah. I mean, really is like kind of next level stuff. I mean, like, I think the clarity, like we were talking about clarity earlier, like I think this definitely is like completely clear. Like you are composing the shots and moving the eye in the way, and you're not even though you have tons of detail in your pages, you're still not like muddling where the eye needs to go.
Right. Thanks. Yeah, that's been one of the things that I've found learning how to ink, and learning to compose pictures in when you're doing animation. So you're just making sure that the picture moves, but it's also very important that the thing about animation is that every panel must relate to the panels on each side of it in a way that, because otherwise it's nauseating. I think, when you watch them move and that they don't work together. So
Right.
you can actually, it makes you feel weird, and it gives you kind of a headache when you jump around. So trying to bring that smoothness to the comic book page has been like it's been it's I think it's really made me see comics differently. I'm like, oh, I could do this, or I can control this aspect of it in a way before I was just kind of swinging in the dark.
Hmm.
Now I get why I'm doing it. So, um, yeah, I feel better. I feel like I'm finally doing what I was supposed to be doing the whole time, but didn't know how.
That's amazing. Like I did, like I'm jealous. Like I'm totally jealous. So like it's almost like you did all this, heavy, long years of work,
Yeah.
but what it did is it clarified the vision that's always been sort of in your head.
Yeah, I would say so, because I learned to pare away, like, because I think one of the things I got away with when I was younger was just enthusiasm. Because
Hmm.
I would draw what I thought was fun, and would draw it as best as I could at the time. But I remember I've told poor Dan. I remember I was studying Escher when I was working on Wonder Man, and I was really interested in trying to figure out perspective and bent perspective, and how the eye works and what that feels like in a drawing. And poor Dan, I handed him a 2-page spread once of basically a huge banana pan Escher style perspective with all these tiles breaking and falling in everywhere. And it took me forever to figure out, and completely unnecessary to the story. But
Sure.
um, I just wanted to see his face when he saw it for the first time, because it was ludicrous. There was no reason for it, but it was fun. Now I
Yeah.
have that same sort of like fun, but it's focused, and it's useful as opposed to just being interesting. And I
Yeah.
think that's definitely the animation coming through.
So the pages, I mean, are you drawing pencil? Are you inking digitally? Like how are you doing it all traditionally? Like what's your,
So I've tried. So when I do animation, I almost exclusively draw on the Cintiq, and
okay.
it's like drawing on glass. It took me a long time to get used to. Um, and I get it. I get why people do digital. And the debate was, do I want to do digital because it's faster and it still looks great, or do I want to take the extra time to do it on paper? And I decided to go for paper because I'm a dinosaur, and there's something about drawing on paper that I liked.
Yeah.
Um, and I really wanted to have the actual thing. I like holding the
Hmm.
thing. Um, so I'll read the script, and I'll do some thumbnails, and I'll play with those for a little while. And then I'll do ballpoint pen version of the page. And that's some of the stuff I sent you, like the cat one. That's all ballpoint pen. Um,
Dude, that's crazy.
yeah, so I'll pencil it rough, and then I'll ballpoint pen it, and then I'll fiddle with it quite a bit in Photoshop to make sure that I like where everything is at, and I'll change stuff, and I'll redraw things when I need to, and then I'll print that up, and then I'll light table ink it.
Okay.
Yeah. So the but the middle stage between penciling and inking, that Photoshop stage, is, I mean, I will spend forever like noodling, moving this guy a micron over this way, or changing a hat and doing all this stuff till I get it just the way I like it. And then I have this light table that I built out of a wall fixture, like it's a big light wall fixture, and you
Okay.
control the lumens, and so it's gigantic. And so I have that in the garage in my studio out there, and so I'll sit down, turn the radio on, or put it like something that I have.
You don't have to think about.
I don't have to think about it. Put it in and just ink it, just like
Yeah.
work on the lines. And that took me forever. I don't know if you ink your own. I mean, you do ink your own stuff, right?
I did. Yeah. I inked a bunch of my own stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it took me forever to figure out how to ink.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like a long time. It took a long time, because I'm used to shape, and I'm not a line guy. I'm not a crosshatchy,
Me
Um,
neither.
yeah, but I had to learn the fundamentals of inking to make it work, because I tried doing it with just the ballpoint pen stuff, which has a lot of life in it, but it's also kind of sketchy, and it just didn't look right.
Yeah.
It didn't give the book the classic fantasy feel that I wanted. So part of the reason it's taken so long to get to this stage is like I had to learn how to ink my own stuff, because there's I can't afford Dan anymore. And Dan's busy doing his own great work.
Yeah, for sure.
He doesn't have time to help fix my stuff anymore.
Well, what did you settle on for inking? Because like for me, inking got to a micron pen, defining lines. Like, okay, here are all my shapes, and then I would go in with a brush, and I would then go over that to emphasize.
It's this guy, which is basically just a Japanese pen brush thing. And then not refillable. And then I have some that are refillable that I will use. Right. And then just a collection of microns.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The idea of dipping a pen and doing the crow quill stuff, that was a bridge too far. I couldn't even get my head around that.
I never got the hand of the crow quill. I just never did. I was much more comfortable with a brush. And, and that was just, and I mean, that was me wanting to be, golden. Because he was like when I'm like 21 years old or 20 years old and I'm in his office and he's like, oh, I just ink everything with a Series 7 number 8. And I'm like, and my head is just breaking.
Right, that's a big fat brush.
Yeah. Listen, that your reaction was my reaction, when I was a kid, like, cause I owned one, it was like a number 1, like, I'm like, that seemed dangerous. So I would just, incessantly try to use that thing, try to ink and figure it out. And, I'd never say I got close to being great at it, but I mean, it was the tool that I understood the most. And, I have an iPad and I have a Cintiq, and I still never feel the inking on those things feels anything remotely close to a real inking job, like ink on paper.
Yeah. That was my feeling too. As much as I could see doing it, I could never get the handle on it. Like Ron Garney inks, and he was one of the ones advocating for me inking on the Cintiq because that's how he does it. And he's able to get the best of lines and stuff looks amazing. But I was never able to get something that felt right to me. And I just think that Ron's amazing. So it's there's
that.
I mean, there's that. He's a damn genius. So, but I was never able to quite get the feel of it to make it to work for me. So I went back to just doing it on paper.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I finished up a couple of things for the convention. Like I had things that were just sitting around unfinished. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up inking them, and I'm like, oh yeah, like this is so much more successful than anything I've inked on the computer over the years. So I get it. So, whatever works for anybody, fine. I
agreed. Absolutely. Like I would never want to harsh on anyone for choosing whatever they're choosing. But for me, and I also think that on some emotional level, right? Some just egotistical level, I'd like having the page, right?
Yeah.
It connects me to the things I like about comics. Whereas the having the digital copy, I don't feel that same sort of success in a drawing.
Yeah.
I don't quite. It's just not. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different thing. Yeah. I think it's a different thing, and I think, I remember when I was teaching. So I took over Dave's class at an ad school in Atlanta. That's how I ended up in the design world. And they had a photography department, and it was at the time when the digital SLRs were just coming out. And I was like, why would anybody be going off to school to learn anything but how to use a digital SLR and Photoshop? Because as a production tool, that's what anybody's going to use moving forward.
Right.
At that point, film cameras became an art tool. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting thing because I think about like if I was younger, or if I was like for some reason hit in the head and decided I was going to do comics for a living now, like I would.
Terrible idea, by the way. I mean, I'm doing it, but it's not.
Well, I have to have severe head trauma to read it. And I would probably only do it digitally because as a production tool, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
It'll draw a straight line for me. Done.
Done.
But if someone said, hey, you don't have to worry about money for a year and you can draw a comic book, Alex, right, it would be all on paper.
Yeah.
So
my dream is to be even less efficient and have and have my pages hand lettered on the page. That's,
oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that factor.
I know, right? Well, because you're not as crazy as I am.
Right.
Yeah, that's my dream, is to be far enough ahead and have enough forethought, really, to pencil it and then send it to a letterer and have them letter it. I mean, obviously, John Workman would be the the dream, but there's so many great guys out there that still do hand lettering, though it's rare. Pay them whatever they wanted for hand lettering, and then ink the pages, and then have the finished page. But it's not efficient, and it's certainly not smart to do it that way.
No, I don't. I want to get back into the Kickstarter in a second, but sure. I wonder like how there's such a market for so many different things in this world, and I think about like comics and how we have there's kind of a deficit, except for like the artist edition things. And like, when you get IDW putting out like the Parker books and that kind of stuff, we don't have right. a very luxury approach to some things. And I would love to see a project that's, this whole hand done thing.
Yeah. Well, I think Walt Simonson still is doing that on Ragnarok. I think John Workman is hand lettering his thing. I could be wrong. But I think that's where I kind of thought like, oh, this is still a possibility. Oh, I would love to have those pages. I would love to have just the artistry of the ink, the letters on the page. I would love that.
No, I get it. I mean, yeah. And it's, and listen, there are people doing digital lettering, which is unbelievably good. And it improves the quality of the book on a graphic design level that,
oh yeah,
is unparalleled. But there's the old fart in me that wants to see that thing too.
Agreed. I mean, is it pure ego? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no other reason than because it's something that I want. But like it's because it's way smarter to do it digitally, because say you have to change something or put it in a different language or any of those things. It's just way better. And my friend Troy is is lettering the book, and he's an amazing letterer. And I've known him since CrossGen, and he's great. And it's digital and it looks amazing. But like, there's just something about pulling a page. I have an old John Buscema page up here from when he did the Avengers annual, and he inked it himself, and it's hand lettered, and I mean, I don't have many prized possessions. I don't care about stuff much, but like, I love looking at that thing. I look at it every day.
It's yeah. I mean, it's the thing. I'm gonna have to pull out the lettered pages of mine and just and lock them in a box or something now.
Yeah.
So give me the overview of what the Kickstarter is, what the book is, how many issues, what's the scope and scale of this kingdom.
Okay, so it's the Kickstarter it's just the first issue, which is done except for some lettering and some coloring. So we're in the middle of finishing that right now. Mm-hmm. And then the goal is to do a Kickstarter for every issue. And then the first story arc is 5 issues. And then the goal then would be to put all those 5 issues into a trade paperback and either find a publisher or also Kickstarter that, depending on what we can find interest in. And then James and I have the next story arc, which is probably 6 issues, already planned and thought out. And then we have several other arcs that are possibilities. So the goal is to do 100 issues. There's so many ideas. It's such a huge world. Did James tell you about his novel that he wrote?
He did. He's sending me a copy of it.
Yeah, I've read some of it. I haven't read it all yet.
Well, I'm helping you out in this one because he cited that, and I told him what I do with my my readers. Right. I print up copies for them from an on-demand printer. So I send them all the links and a discount code. So right. you'll be getting a copy.
I know. Yeah, he told me yesterday he's doing that, and that's a great thing because I'm loving it, and his writing is amazing. But reading a screen is,
It's tedious.
yeah. It's all. Yeah, it's. I can't. Also, I don't know about you, but my vision has been.
What, these glasses aren't telling you enough that I need to?
Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I wear contacts and I have to wear these
Oh, no,
glasses.
I don't do that, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah, right.
the eyes
Yeah,
get tired.
yeah. I have a couple of different readers for just having a conversation like this, where I need to maybe work on the screen, and then I
Mhm.
have a particular set of readers that I have for inking. And if I don't wear my glasses while I'm doing that, then I have to be right up on the page
Yeah.
doing it. Right. So age has made the process a little more difficult and and psychologically more challenging too, because the idea of going blind, not it's a deep-seated fear.
It's low on my list of things to do.
Yeah. Yeah, fix my eyes. um so we have 100 issues possible, and so in the world is there's the basic story of the first story arc of Rogue's Kingdom is that there's Peachy and Rondo, who are the two main characters. It's the kid and the guy with the beard who looks like Warlord. Um, they are in trouble, and in the opening of the story, you've seen the work where they are in a prison caravan. They're on their way to get basically put in jail or executed for crimes, and then the caravan is attacked by a rival faction. We don't know who it is at first. There's three main kingdoms, city states, and they this caravan. So they're having their replacement wizard of Lumpland's replacement wizard is the little kid Maliki and his guardian. They're in the front of the caravan. So the caravan gets attacked. Um, Peachy and Rondo survive, and then instead of escaping, Peachy, who is a little scamp, comes up with the idea of impersonating Maliki and the other guy in front, and then going to the city, pretending to be the wizard and the guardian, and then stealing a bunch of stuff and skedaddling. So that's what the plan is. But it turns out that both Peachy and Rondo wind up being a great wizard and a great guardian, and they get embroiled in the politics, and they wind up saving the kingdom and doing all that stuff. So they're very much reluctant heroes, but they wind up being the right hero for the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I love that story. Like I just love um, because we get to play with some stuff. Like each one of them has to pretend to be this other thing while actually fulfilling that role better than anyone could possibly imagine. Better even than the people who were originally going to do it. So that. The first story arc is about them and their adventures, and then the second story arc is going to be about we meet the princess, and she's our Zorro character, and so it's more about her and Peachy. And then James's novel hints at a connection between the world she goes to, where there's dragons, and then his novel, and then then there's going to be a wizard challenge, and there's going to be. I mean, we have so much super cool stuff planned. The dream would be to be able to Kickstarter every issue and give everyone a chance to participate in all the collector side and the supporting the comic book side, and then put out the trade paperbacks for people who don't have necessarily access to Kickstarter or just buy stuff in a bookstore.
Sure.
Yeah.
James actually didn't go into the sort of the scope of it,
Oh,
and fantasy
right.
deep in my heart, so I just get so excited when I think about it.
Yeah, at one point, like I'm so excited about having it come out and being able to keep doing more and more of it. There's so much fun stuff because I'm a fantasy head too. Like I love it. And a quick bonus, I want to tell you one of the things we're going to do as a stretch goal is I put together a character sheet for the main character Rondo, and for each issue we'll put together a character sheet so you could play him in D&D
Oh,
if you
that's
wanted to.
awesome.
Oh yeah, no, that was a friend of mine. Curtis's idea is like, you should make a character sheet of this character. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I would. Like, it was such a light bulb. I'm like, hell yeah. So we rolled him up. We got his, we figured out what his stats were. It's great. And so that's going to be,
Cool.
yeah, it's going to be a bonus, and you'll get one for all the main characters throughout. For this Kickstarter, it's Rondo. For the next one, it'll be Peachy, and the next one after that will be Princess Terra. Um, so that eventually you'll be able to play Rogue's Kingdom in D&D if you want to.
I love that.
Right. It was such a good idea.
It's like a no-brainer.
Right. But I hadn't thought of it. My friend's like, why do you do that? Because I'm an idiot. It never occurred to me.
Listen, take it where you can get it. I love that.
Oh, yeah. And as a writer and as a D&D player, one of the things that was really interesting is like, I know these characters inside and out, but like trying to figure out what their stats were.
Sure.
Like trying to figure out what...
the gear.
Oh, yeah. So he's, again, what's his gear? He's a swashbuckler, but he has to do this thing. So that's a fighter in this level. And James and I had never talked about his height, but like I had to figure out how tall he was. And luckily we were simpatico and all that stuff, but it was a very interesting way to approach character.
Yeah. No, that's super. I love that. Yeah. It's, there are these things that I hear and I go, oh yeah, this is the kind of cool thing. Like if you're a writer and you've played a lot of D&D, like maybe do want to make character sheets of your characters just so you have even a more fleshed out idea. Like, and I know that there's lots of sort of like writers character sheets, but I mean like a D&D character sheet, which might help you just envision things just a little bit better.
It was, so one of the things that really helped, I haven't done the one for Peachy yet. We'll do that one for the next Kickstarter, but he's a wizard. Mm-hmm. And I have a very clear idea of how his magic works and what kind of magic it is, but trying to figure out what school of magic that is in the D&D world, what kind of spells that means, what kind of, like, what are the items, what are the pros and cons? It's a fascinating exercise.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah. So what other stretch goals do you guys have there? I know that you have a bunch of variant cover stretch goals.
So we have variant covers. We have one from Zach Howard, one from Brennan. He's doing one. I have to do one because I did this. I think the cover I sent you is the wraparound cover.
Mm-hmm.
And so pretty late in the game, we decided to make the wraparound cover a special deluxe version of the book. So we'll have more stuff in the back and we'll do the wraparound cover, which means I now have to do a new cover.
More work.
I mean, I'll chase the idea and pay the price. So yeah, I have to do a new cover. So I'm doing the basic A cover, and then Dave Johnson's going to do a cover. Brennan's doing a cover. We have Ryan Sook doing one, and Zach Howard's doing one. So we have those as they're not necessarily stretch goals. I think those are just you can get those covers.
Okay.
Yeah, those are options. And then I have postcards. I made like old school like travel postcards for Lumpland.
Very cool.
Visit historic Lumpland, and like I have some postcards I'm doing, and James is writing cool little stuff on the back. The character sheet card is going to be a stretch goal. I have a live thing for the launch party. That's a big poster that I'll be adding that as a digital, like a wallpaper. And then one of the other goals I want to do is if we reach certain places, I want to then send everybody a black and white PDF of the art.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Right. Yeah. Just a little, like, I think if we can, because I think black and white is cool. Brandon's colors are obviously amazing, but I think seeing behind the scenes sometimes is fun. So that'll be one of the stretch goals. So I think, yeah, I think that's it. I think those are all of our stretch goals. Do you have any suggestions for some?
I always say less stuff and
more digital.
Like, especially if you can go digital, all the better. Cause I think, you can get something in people's hands quickly. They're excited.
Right. That's why the digital black and white version and like the digital wallpaper and those kind of things, that we can get the rewards out right away. So you can
just protect your bottom line in these things, don't t-shirts and all this, like, just keep it simple, stupid,
Yeah. That was the advice I got from everyone who knows about Kickstarters, is like, you always want to give them something that's fun, but you also don't want to cut into what may be a very slim profit margin.
Yeah.
Because you want to get the book out and you want to get the next one out and you want to have it be consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would prefer to have the entire series rather than one book and a bunch of swag.
Right. Yeah, that's my thinking too.
Yeah, that's me. I want to read something.
Right.
I don't need more crap. I need more things that I'm interested in life.
Exactly. Yeah. No. So the dream is to do 100 issues and then tell this gigantic story because as it, because at some point I want to show everyone all these ridiculous character drawings that I've done in the back. Yeah.
Of course. Listen, you capitalize on your other things. You know what I mean? So if you have all that stuff, that becomes a thing eventually. So, yeah, dude, I think it's great. When does the campaign end?
I believe it ends on the 13th. So we start on the 13th. Yeah, 13th to 13th.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so we've recorded this in advance. So at this point, let's play it dramatically in two ways. One, like you guys have cruised like you 5 times the amount of money you set up, and you're like, it's amazing, and every stretch goal has been hit. So this is just you and me chatting, doing a victory lap, which is fantastic. But if you haven't gotten it, I'd say maybe go check it out. And because Jeff still needs a couple of different options for his new Mercedes.
Right.
Or the other one is we need to get this thing completely funded and get all the stretch goals hit. So,
yeah, let's do that.
The classic bump. Let's get people to go check it out. The links will be in the description, so they'll be able to just click on it and go right to the Kickstarter.
I'll have a QRC code too. I think that's what it's called. The QRC, is that what they were called?
The QR code.
QR code, right? So we'll have one of those too that you can put on that people should be able to just, or the link, right? Whichever works. Yeah.
All of it, all of the above. How do you get a QR code if it's on your phone? I'm kidding.
I don't know. That's a fantastic question. You can't. You
have to
you can hold it up to a mirror.
Oh, whoa.
Would that work though? I don't know if that would even work.
Camera up as a selfie I think it would show your selfie image.
Yeah. It's backwards. That's okay. We'll have
2 mirrors. I think 2 mirrors would solve the problem.
All right. And then maybe write stuff backwards so people can
get a friend.
Right. That's it. 2. Everyone get one.
Somebody will figure this out. Technology it's moving so much faster than us. Listen, I can't wait to actually get the thing. I don't buy a ton of comic books. I buy things that I'm really interested in, and I'm pretty pumped. And I buy my friends stuff.
Thanks, man. I really do appreciate taking the time to talk about it and promoting it. I really do. I know that every little bit helps, and this is going to be huge. And it's fun. It's fun for me to talk about it. I love the project.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've known your work for 32, 3 years. I've seen it all.
Right.
And it's twice as good as it was, at least.
Oh, thanks, man. That does my heart. That feels good. Thanks, man.
I don't know if twice was the funniest number I could have picked, but that was what I chose.
No, I appreciate that for you. As you would know, we've known each other forever, and you're like been in the biz together forever. We've both gone white a little bit in the beard, but now you just have that wizardly look.
I do. I look very sagely. Is that a word? Yeah. I don't know. So go click on the link. I'm terrible at promoting things. Just go on the link and check it out. If you like fantasy, or if you like anything that James or Jeff has done, you're going to love this. It's a work of passion. It's a labor of love. James and I have put everything into it, and we've been working on it for a really long time. And I do think if you like fantasy, if you like us, then you're going to love this. There you go. You said it way better than I did.
Oh, I've been practicing.
All right. So I'm coming out in January to your.
Oh, right on.
So we'll have to get together.
We'll have many beers. Oh, you don't drink, so we'll have many cups of coffee.
We'll have a whatever, Yeah. Well, you can beer it up, and I'll drive you home.
When was the last time you were at Medford?
2020.
Okay. It's doing good. There's new stuff, and there's great places to hang out. There's good coffee places, and I think it's a lot more crowded. And so there's my wife, we were driving the other day. She's like, "What is up with all this traffic? What happened?" I go, we did. We happened. this is us. We did this. All these people coming to this great place. Now we have traffic, and it's not so bad. But
we can sneak over to Jacksonville and hang out there.
I love it over there. Yeah, Megan's right there now. So the place that I'm having the launch party is a place called Miners Bazaar, and I'll send you a link to it if you want to see it, because we're going to do a video. We're going to live stream. And Miners Bazaar is right there on the corner in Jacksonville, across from the bike shop.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man. This has been a great time. This is the best way to spend a day in my book.
Yeah. You are kind of one of the few people who've come back. So it's kind of nice to get someone to come back on the show.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I think your show is amazing, and I'm really glad that you're doing it, because you are creating this sort of archive of what is, in essence, kind of a lost art form of making comics. I know that there's never been a mentor kind of thing. There's not a great system for passing on this knowledge, and a lot of it gets lost, and it bums me out, because there's so much magic in the page. And I think that until someone can show, I mean, it takes a long time to figure out. Like I said, it's taken me years to figure it out.
If I could somehow get, subscribers to, pay me $5 a month, for the show, I would do more. Like I would, there's things I want to do, but like, it's a time thing, as much as I love doing certain things, I can't do them all for free. Like, this is for free. This is me getting a bit of, creative jolt, and, I don't know, just it's a kind of a fun thing to do, to get to talk to people like you who can like make me feel like, all right, there's still more things I can learn and do,
Yeah, it is a joy. And it's one of those things that I think the internet, I mean, thanks to the internet and the pandemic and some other things, have sort of inspired a lot of these reaching out, like these new approaches to this conversation. Because I think otherwise I never would have got to talk to Howard Chaykin about, I mean, I've talked to Howard a bunch, and he's a pal, and I think he's amazing, but like getting able to actually ask him some of his process questions. And he talks about why he does insets and this stuff. It's being able to have it be demystified, right? Like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Because I have all the books on comics. I've read them all, and there's none of that stuff is in there.
No, because they're really sort of A, B, C, D, E, F kind of. Mm-hmm. It's like, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you have a comic book at the end. But there's all these things that we have to solve in the creative world, because things don't work out that basic, system. Like something else comes up and you're like, shit, I got to solve this problem. How do I do that?
Yeah. Like one of the things that I love about comics is that I don't have to worry about a jump cut. Like whenever you do boards, one of the things you have to do is all the math of like, okay, they enter over here, they stand here, and then they cross over to here, and do that in such a way that is smooth. That I remember I would stand, someone would come by and I'd be just staring off into space. And I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm working. I'm trying to figure out where everyone is. Yeah.
Wow. Well, dude, good luck. I'm so happy to see people doing the things that they want to do. Like there's nothing better than seeing that. And because I just know how good it is for our souls to make these things.
Well, hopefully we can do one of these for every issue.
There you go.
So we got at least 100 more conversations coming.
Oh my gosh. Everyone will be tuning in, I'm sure.
Right. Imagine how into the weeds we can get on all the most obscure stuff, like gutter size. Oh,
you say this, dude, but I was about to talk about gutter sizes when you were talking about panel borders. I'm like, yeah, man. I was about to go into that. I'm like, you know what? I'm just...
We could talk about that for like how it affects time, how it affects the relationship between panels. Like there's a million things to talk about gutter size alone.
If you're running late on the project, those gutters get much bigger.
Yes. Yeah, that's a lot of open panels too.
Yes, all of the above.
Yep.
All right, Jeff.
Thanks for having me on, man. This has been a joy.
Anytime. I'm chuffed to have you here, buddy.